This video, obtained by our news partners at the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette, was taken by a security camera at an equipment manufacturing plant in Salem, Ohio, some 20 miles from East Palestine. You can see what appear to be sparks or flames under one of the cars as it passes the plant.
You look at the videos of the chemical trails and clouds going up into the atmosphere in this area, and this stuff is traveling for quite some distance. I mean, it's not just traveling a mile or two. It is up there in the atmosphere, and then it's coming down, and it's coming down into rivers, streams. You're talking massive soil contamination. And this is a very, very, very big problem.
These aren't storm clouds. This is the f***ing shit that they burn off, the f***ing shit they burn off in East Palestine.
State officials sending a message of reassurance to residents in East Palestine, saying the air quality is safe and the risk to the drinking water is low. But they're advising people to use bottled water as they wait for test results to come back and urge anyone with a well to get it tested.
How should us kids feel safe with the smell marshal?
If you believe the smell and the is coming from the butyl acrylate, all we do know about that chemical as one is it's toxic to fish, but it also has what's called a real low odor threshold, which means you'll smell it for a long time before it will cause a health effect.
I just want to say that smell is noxious. After moving those rocks a little bit, it's disgusting. Burnt plastic, chemical, awful, awful smell. Oh, the smell. My God. How long is it going to be like this?
Although the testing in approximately 75 homes did show elevated levels of VOCs, further testing in those 75 homes found that contaminants of concern from the derailment were not present in those homes. Testing results from East Palestine's municipal water source have come back, and the results are that drinking water, testing those 5 wells that go into the community system, those 5 wells have all come back clean. The water is safe to drink. We never thought that the municipal water was contaminated, but out of an abundance of caution, our Ohio EPA took samples which were analyzed, and they in fact came back and were shown to be safe. You do not need to drink bottled water if you are on municipal water.
All right, guys, I've got an update. It's not a good one, but it's a big one. So, about an hour ago, my kids were going outside to play, and they saw a pickup truck parked down the road near where the beaver dam is, right? So they yell for me, of course, and we see 2 men get out of the truck and walk into the woods. I get my kids in the house. I call the police. I turn on my scanner to listen for the police to come because I live far out. I know it's going to take a minute. 30 minutes go by. No call, nothing over the scanner. Police officer drives by. I think he's coming to talk to me. Nope, he just keeps on going. I go outside. The men are gone. I go in the woods. They destroyed everything to pass the chemicals through the dam. They broke it all up to get it through. So now there's nothing left. I am so glad I went and got samples this morning. Also, they never called to see if I was okay. tell me the men in the woods were gone. Nothing. Nope, nothing. So they must have known who the men in the woods were. This is the truck we saw. 2 men got out of this truck and walked into my woods. So anybody that caught my live this morning that I still can't download to show you, but overnight, leaving this alone, it doubled in size. Like, it was huge when we went out this morning, and it was frozen over. And 30 minutes after these men left, it's broken up and passing through the dam and almost completely gone at this point. Here's another picture just for reference. This makes me so angry, you guys. Like, this feels like somebody's trying to cover it up. I tried to get a couple close-ups of what is left. I'm just really now reaching out to you guys to maybe try to help me find a place to send this sample to. And now I especially need the help because now, even if the EPA comes out, they're not going to find anything or do anything. And I have a well here. Like, I'm worried about this being in our drinking water, our bathing water. And someone please explain to me how a sheriff's office is called about 2 men entering a woods. And they even have my callback number, so they could even call me back. I gave them my number, but they had it anyway. But anyway, they didn't even call to check on me. So that makes me feel like they knew who was out in that woods or saw them or just ignored it or didn't see them, whatever.
Many East Palestine residents are still questioning if it's truly safe for them to be home, breathing the air and using the water. Our Bree Buckley has the breakdown on that side of the story tonight.
I think people should be confident that multiple agencies, both at the state and the national level, are very serious about this, are watching very closely, and are not allowing any wiggle room when it comes to safety.
Today we heard from a variety of experts about the aftermath of that chemical cloud that was released to avoid a potential explosion on the tracks.
Russ, we got a lot of information today about the aftermath of the derailment. So here are a few of the major takeaways tonight. First, we heard from Governor DeWine and the state's top health official, both assuring the public there is no major health hazard and that the air and drinking water in East Palestine are deemed safe. More on that in just a moment. Also tonight, even after some trace chemicals were found in some streams and tributaries of the Ohio River, they say the drinking water remains safe, with any contaminants being captured and filtered so far through the treatment process.
Wow.
Look at all that.
Look at it.
It's all in the bottom of the creek bed.
There are literally hundreds of dead fish, all coming from the one creek that's coming from the wreckage. That fish in this one is actually probably about a foot long, so it's not just the little ones. And then you see a bunch of little ones scattered around it. Little beaver runs into big beaver, runs through our state park, and there's dead fish everywhere. I can't even begin to imagine the trickle effect we're going to have on the wildlife around here.
Governor, if you were to live in the area, would you feel comfortable moving back into your home?
Look, I think that I would be drinking the bottled water, and I would be continuing to find out what the tests were showing as far as the air. I would be alert and concerned, but I think I would probably be back in my house.
Here in East Palestine, the cleanup is still a work in progress, especially here at waterways like Sulphur Run, where there were plenty of dead fish. A family that lives just feet away says they've now been told their home is unlivable.
My nieces, my 13-year-old nieces and my sister got diagnosed today with a type of chemical burn in their lungs. You know, and they're the people that are trying to figure out, what am I going to do? I have enough, money for one night in a hotel.
Jamie Kosa of East Palestine says the community is definitely feeling the effects of the derailment disaster of February 3rd. Her family no longer has a place to call home. The West Main Street house she lived in was just steps away from contaminated Sulphur Run Creek, water that has seeped into her home. For now, she's living in a West Virginia hotel and telling me her story on Zoom.
I was told that my house was safe to go into, and because I threw a fit, the railroad sent a toxicologist down and it was deemed not safe to go into.
Begin with the Ohio toxic train derailment. Residents there still not sure the water is safe to drink, despite the EPA saying otherwise.
All families need to know that they are safe.
The water, we are not showing any evidence of any contaminants. The governor pushed that news out yesterday. The municipal water wells are safe.
Massillon, Ohio, Tuslaw area. This is like an oil-like substance in our tap water. You can see it separating from the water, 50 miles from East Palestine. This is what I'm supposed to bathe my baby daughter in, 3 months old. And our tap water is contaminated with chemicals.
So my question for you, Ohio Governor, would you drink the water in East Palestine? If a resident asked you to today, are you comfortable with saying that you would drink that water?
Oh, absolutely.
Hey guys, I don't know what to think about this right now, but I'm in Lexington, Kentucky, and I'm about 5 hours south of East Palestine, where the train's derailed and released toxic chemicals into the air. Well, it's a heavy overcast today in Lexington, and it's raining, and birds are falling out of the sky and dying in the parking lot right now. Look.
The Ohio EPA says roughly 3,500 fish have died from 12 different species with chemicals in 6 different waterways, including the Ohio River. They say a contaminant plume is making its way towards West Virginia, but continues to dissipate. And as many are concerned about wildlife dying, they say there has been no evidence of non-aquatic species dying from the derailment.
First News has been hearing all of your calls about your animals suffering and getting sick, some even dying. And it's not just causing problems for the animals, it's also causing problems for their owners as well. Taylor Holzer and his family run Parker Dairy. It's just outside East Palestine's original evacuation zone. Taylor is an ODNR registered fox keeper. A couple of his foxes broke their legs trying to run after the initial derailment. One of his foxes even died.
Out of nowhere, he just started coughing really hard and just shut down, and he had liquid diarrhea and just went very fast.
Taylor tells me all of his foxes have been sick and acting different since the weekend. Some have abnormally puffy faces, including the one he's holding. He says they are not eating properly. Many are dealing with stomach issues and are acting lethargic.
This isn't how a fox should act. He's very weak, limp. His eyes are very watery and weepy.
Some of the foxes are pacing rapidly in their pen, another sign they are not well. Taylor says the train derailment is causing all of these issues.
Smoke and chemicals from the train, it's the only thing that could cause it, because it doesn't just happen out of nowhere. The chemicals that we're being told are safe in the air, that's definitely not safe.
For the animals.
It's for animals or people.
Did Norfolk Southern just bury chemicals in order to get this rail line back open? It sure looks it. This story is not as big and flashy as the controlled release that we saw a week ago in East Palestine, Ohio, but it could have far worse consequences down the road. Norfolk Southern is claiming that they removed some of the contaminated soil from the derailment site. However, the EPA is now calling them out, saying that they did not remove enough or do enough to mitigate further issues down the road. As this video shows overhead views, it's very clear that the railroad did what they do best. They put the tracks back in service as soon as possible so they could continue running freight. As someone who has 10 years combined between truck driving and railroading, I understand the importance of getting that rail line back open, but it should not have come at the cost of skimping out on the cleanup efforts for the contaminated soil. Now, Norfolk Southern says they will continue to work with the EPA to ensure that this doesn't become an issue, but do we really believe that?
17 days after a plume of vinyl chloride covered the sky,
Things in that city and across Ohio in the Ohio River Valley are getting worse, not better. The Ohio EPA is closing parts of the connecting rivers to keep contaminants from spreading. People living in the area say the health effects of what they've gone through just keep getting worse.
My eyes feel like they're going to fall out of my head. They're bulging out of my head. I have constant, not running nose. Every time I blow my nose about every 8 to 10 minutes, and I blow blood out of my nose.
And it's not just the air. Our Rich McHugh examined the waters in nearby rivers.
So a couple of miles outside of town, this is Leslie Run. I'd heard this is happening. I didn't quite believe it, but watch this. So when you stick this stick in the water, all the chemicals come to the surface in like rainbows. It's quite alarming.
Another woman shared this picture with us, shows 2 different rashes on her body, on her chin and chest.
Tempers flaring in East Palestine.
I'm not happy at all.
Outrage brewing following Norfolk Southern CEO Alan Shaw's unannounced visit on Saturday. Residents fuming as more questions linger over that toxic train derailment that's fueled concerns over air and water quality.
Why wasn't this voiced openly so that we could all have gone and had a few words with this person?
Mike McKim was among a small group of business owners and community members that spoke with the CEO privately.
He was apprehensive about coming here with a bunch of angry people. I'm not afraid to say that it wasn't right. And there's a lot of other people that feel the same way that I feel.
Security cameras from his newly opened winery captured the nearby fiery derailment. Customers now canceling reservations.
It's the American dream. You know, it's kind of turned into an American nightmare.
In an interview with our affiliate WFMJ, the CEO declined to answer specific questions about cleanup concerns at the site.
We worked with the Ohio EPA on safe operations and safety for the community.
The company says they've distributed more than $2.6 million to help residents. But now, the Department of Transportation saying they will hold the company accountable, adding that, quote, until the number of derailments is 0, everyone involved in our rail system must make safety improvements a priority. This comes as air and water testing continues. The EPA saying there are still no water quality concerns in East Palestine.
Norfolk Southern plied Ohio politicians with campaign cash. Extensive lobbying by Darrell Rowland Monday, February 20, 2023. Columbus, Ohio, WSYX. Almost exactly a month before a Norfolk Southern train derailed and spewed hazardous materials in eastern Ohio, the company gave the maximum $10,000 to help bankroll Governor Mike DeWine's inaugural festivities. A 6-on-your-side examination of state records shows this contribution, which is part of $29,000 the Virginia-based corporation has contributed to DeWine's political fund since he first ran for governor in 2018, is merely one piece of an extensive, ongoing effort to influence statewide officials and Ohio lawmakers. In all, the railway company has contributed about $98,000 during the past 6 years to Ohio statewide and legislative candidates. According to data from the Secretary of State, virtually all went to Republicans, although Norfolk Southern hedged its support for DeWine in 2018 with a $3,000 check to Democratic gubernatorial candidate Richard Cordray. In addition, the company filed more than 200 state-required quarterly reports disclosing lobbying of state officials or legislators in the same period. A total of 39 of those public disclosures showed that DeWine or another statewide official was the lobbyist's target, while another 167 were aimed at state lawmakers. Most of the disclosed attempts to influence Ohio leaders came on generic rail or transportation issues. Some efforts, however, were devoted to defeating legislation that would have established tougher safety standards for rail yards and train operations. Years of killing Ohio bills designed to make railroads safer. Getting special attention from Norfolk Southern was a bipartisan measure introduced in 2 consecutive legislation sessions which would have required a minimum of 2-person crews on freight trains, pushed by advocates as a safety measure. While the size of the crew has not publicly emerged as a factor in the East Palestine derailment, the ardent opposition of Norfolk Southern to that provision and other proposed rail safety measures underscores the company's strong efforts to avoid additional regulation. Also, little-known political fund gives DeWine donors like AEP another shot at influence. In early 2021, lobbyists made their case to the office of Ohio Attorney General Dave Yost against the two-person crew mandate. The bill would have required the Attorney General, at the request of the Public Utilities Commission, to bring a civil action against railroads that violated the law. The penalties would have ranged from a possible $1,000 for a first violation to as much as $10,000 for a third violation within 3 years of the first. There was no indication Yost did anything, and he is now threatening to sue the railroad over the East Palestine derailment, per a letter obtained by 6 on Your Side. Attorney General Dave Yost and by WSYXWTTE. In the end, however, the lobbying effort was a success. While neither measure passed, the later version got 5 hearings in 2021 in the House Transportation and Public Safety Committee. Republican co-sponsor Brett Hillier of Urichsville had said at the time that the bill contained railroad safety measures that are long overdue and critical not only for industry safety, but for the communities impacted by the railroads. State Rep Brett Hillier, R. Urichsville, Ohio House. Railroads are a very important part of commerce, but if you start thinking about what's carried in a rail car, what kind of havoc that could wreak on your districts and your communities, Hillier said, I think it is a common sense solution to require a two-man train crew. Democratic co-sponsor Michael Sheehy of suburban Toledo, who spent 40 years in the rail industry, said the proposal would provide needed rules to protect Ohioans and assure safety for both the public and railroad worker alike. He left office at the end of 2022. Rep. Michael Sheehy, D. Oregon. During a hearing on rail safety bill in the fall of 2019, he departed the House at the end of 2022. Ohio Channel. But Randy Noe, Assistant Vice President of Regulatory Affairs for Norfolk Southern, told the House committee that Federal Railroad Administration data does not establish that one-person operations are less safe than multi-person train crews. Besides, he added, Ohio lawmakers have no right to take up safety issues preempted by federal law. Both CSX and the Ohio Chamber of Commerce joined Norfolk Southern in opposing the minimum crew mandate. Ohio's business climate would be negatively impacted by legislation such as HB 186 because the added regulations would increase the cost of doing business in the Buckeye State and would interfere with the employment relationship between employers and their employees. Kevin Schimpf, the Chamber's Director of Labor and Legal Affairs, said. A spokesman for Governor DeWine says campaign contributions have no effect on his decisions. The governor indicated last week the state likely would sue if Norfolk Southern does not uphold its commitment to pay for damages and the cleanup effort. Norfolk Southern describes its criteria for campaign donations on its website, saying, "We make political contributions when we determine them to be in the best interests of the corporation. All political spending reflects the railroad's interests, and not those of individual officers or directors." The company also disclosed on its website that it spent $4.36 million on lobbying nationwide in 2021. Ohio. Federal lawmakers demand answers from both the railroad and regulators. The railroad's president and CEO, Alan Shaw, visited East Palestine on Saturday. He pledged, "We are here and will stay here for as long as it takes to ensure your safety and to help East Palestine recover and thrive." Lawmakers are now scrambling to make sure the railroad is held accountable. The House Homeland Security Committee is scheduled to hear informal testimony Wednesday from Karen Huey, Assistant Director of the Ohio Department of Public Safety, and John Esterly, Chairman of the Ohio State Legislative Board with the Brotherhood of Locomotive Engineers. In Washington, Senate Commerce Committee Chairman Maria Cantwell is seeking detailed information about Norfolk Southern. Over the past 5 years, the Democrat from the state of Washington noted that large railroads have cut their workforce by nearly 1/3, shuttered rail yards where railcars are traditionally inspected, and are running longer and heavier trains. Thousands of trains carrying hazardous materials, like the one that derailed in Ohio, travel through communities throughout the nation each day. Railroad safety was the centerpiece of a letter Thursday from U.S. Sens. Sherrod Brown and J.D. Vance of Ohio, plus both of Pennsylvania's senators, to Jennifer L. Homedy, chair of the National Transportation Safety Board. The bipartisan quartet wanted to know how to reclassify trains that are clearly dangerous, like those which derailed in East Palestine, into a higher federal category so that notice goes to states through which they travel. The senators also wondered, are U.S. railroads and shippers investing sufficiently in maintaining the railcars and tracks used by trains that transport hazardous material? It has been reported that the 7 Class I, biggest, Railroads in the U.S. spent more than $114 billion on stock buybacks and cash distributions and paid more than $77 billion in dividends between 2010 and 2021, amounts that significantly exceed the $138 billion spent on their infrastructure during that period. Corporate campaign contributions pay off, critics say. Union members, who vocally supported past legislative attempts to increase rail safety, are especially outspoken after the derailment. Even as the trains have gotten longer, the workforce supporting them has gotten smaller. All of this is done by rail corporations in pursuit of lower operating costs, higher profits, and a better return for shareholders, said Jeremy Ferguson, Transportation Division President of the Sheet Metal, Air, Rail Transportation Union, based near Cleveland. The bottom line of such deference to operating ratios over safety conditions has led us to the point where fewer railroaders with less training are taking longer trains made up of more hazardous materials down tracks with more wear and tear. As the heartbreaking images from East Palestine show, this is a recipe for more catastrophic consequences. The liberal nonprofit Progress Ohio, pointing to Norfolk Southern's extensive record of trying to influence state decision makers, drew a parallel between those completely legal efforts and the illegal activities testified about in an ongoing federal corruption case. As the trial of former Ohio House Speaker Larry Householder and First Energy has shown us, the organization said in a statement, corporate giving to campaigns occasionally comes with a clear expectation of favorable policy outcomes. And in Ohio, Norfolk Southern got what it wanted.